Alright, cool. So, going to do a couple of videos, so the one this week and the one next week, just to talk about some movements using some different equipment that you can do to help strengthen both your glutes and your hamstrings. So this has come about, Jamie's asked the question about what you can do if you're having lower back problems. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to actually work out what's wrong, okay? The exercises that we're going to be going through are targeted, and the equipment that we're using are targeted at your posterior chain. May not necessarily be the issue that needs to be addressed. So as with pretty well every single question we have along the lines of injury, you want to make sure you get an assessment from a physio, make sure you're getting the appropriate scans, and make sure that you're getting the right diagnosis for what is going on there, and that you are addressing the underlying problem. That being said, some of the time when we see people come in here with a history of back problem, it can be from a weak posterior chain. You know, they have trouble with their glutes are weak, their hamstrings are weak, and as a result, they have a little bit of trouble stabilizing that hip capsule, so it results in a lot of additional movement in the lower part of their spine, which can result in bulging discs, etc., etc., etc. So, what we are using today is we are using these bands. You can see some of the green tea selling Instagram girls on there marketing them as booty bands. We use them to try and build up those glutes, which is that booty if you want to get your twerk game strong. So what we're going to go through is we're going to go through two movements. Just going to take you through a basic squat using these bands, and I'm also going to take you through a little bit of a monster walk. So for us, when we use these, they are designed to try and target that posterior chain, so get those glutes and those hamstrings really firing. The way you would position these is these are just going to go around your feet and just sit just above your knees. So you're going to sit in. It's going to be a little awkward to do when you do it because they are quite tight, so there is supposed to be a little bit of resistance. Okay, and what we want to do, have it just above our kneecaps while we do that. Then from there, positioning ourselves into a good squat position. So what I'm coaching is more of an athletic squat than an Olympic weightlifting squat. Feet outside my hips, toes pointed forwards, because we're looking for that glute engagement. What I'm going to want you to do while you do this, I want you to think about those big toes and digging those big toes into the ground. Just remembering that big toe is one of those big drivers for glute engagement. Okay, then from there, what I'm going to do, I'm going to drive those hips back like I'm going to sit onto a chair. I want to try and maintain the integrity of my spine. I'm going to sit back, and as I sit back, I'm going to think about spreading the floor with my feet, keeping those knees tracking over my toes, and digging those glutes into the ground. Go down as low as I can, okay, like I'm sitting on that chair, and then coming up from there. As I come up, what I want to think about is I really want to think about that glute contraction. If you need to, you can do this onto a bench, and you can sit onto that bench as you come up. What we want to avoid driving those knees out so far that we roll up onto the outside of our foot. Remember, one of those key points to start off with was to make sure that we're digging that big toe in the ground. So we want to make sure we've got a nice natural arch in the bottom of our foot. We're not rolling up onto the outside. So again, we're going to think about pulling the ground apart with our feet, keeping that chest up, driving those hips back, and then firing up out of the bottom. As we fire up, thinking about squeezing those glutes, coming up, standing up to full extension. So that's the squat with some resistance bands. It's a good primer for you to do before you start doing a back squat or a front squat, just to try and get that activation piece happening before you move on to, you know, some heavy barbell work. The other movement that we're going to do is we refer to these as monster walks. There's a couple of different names for it, but for us it's a monster walk. We're in the same position. So for us, this is our good athletic position. So if we're working with somebody that's playing a field sport, we're trying to reinforce good posture and position. This is our good athletic position. If I was playing a sport, I can move laterally, backwards, forwards. I can move quite effectively from this position. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to keep my hands in a relatively natural position, and I'm just going to move laterally. toes forward, okay, big toe locked in, and then I'm just moving to the side, okay, taking those nice wide steps back to that good athletic stance. And then I go one way, and then I can reverse it back the other, okay? Now, when you do the monster walks, you do those lateral movements, you can do some quick, more dynamic movements. You can just step to one side, step to the other. You can do 10 meters one way, 10 meters the other. Best thing to do for a prescription for both those movements would obviously work with a coach who knows what you need in regards to those movements. So they're two really good movements that you can use those resistance bands for. Just pick an appropriate resistance that you can fight against. You don't want it too weak, but then on the other side, you don't want it so strong that you're not able to get into that good position while you do it as well. So really good ways to use those bands just to try and build up those glutes, and hopefully that'll make you a little bit faster.